and we will be there. I could change my mask. Look. Having fun. So good morning, everyone. A little bit late, I'm afraid. I'm going to reschedule these lives in the future. And the reason that I'm going to reschedule these is purely and simply because I listen to what it is that you want to have, and then I decide to make the presentation. And what that tends to mean is that I'm working in the morning, creating the presentation, and then it's not giving me enough time to come in and put it up for 10 o'clock. So because I'm doing this in via Zoom, I can't see very easily any comments that people are making. Having said that, I'll come back later on and I'll have a check and see how you are. So I hope you're all well. I've gone past the point of worrying about whether I'm doing a presentation into crickets. In other words, nobody there, but we actually had votes, which was great. We had four tips on managing self-doubt, 4 tips on managing fatigue, and 4 tips on managing pain, and 4 tips on managing self-doubt got 2 votes, and the fatigue got 1. And I'd also had somebody else already who'd said that this was what they wanted. So let's talk self-doubt. So what I'm going to be doing is introducing you to 4. I think actually it's 3.5 is probably the best way. Although having said that, some of the things that I talk about today, you might find there are tips within just the spoken stuff. And so therefore you can go like, oh, that's an aha. So this is around the things successful anxiety managers do. So this is all around assisting you to have more skills. So remember, skills is what this is about. So let's just go on. So I'll put this in here as a caveat. These tips are not designed to be a medical treatment. Now, some of you may know that I have a clinical background. So just to remind you, I am 40 years qualified and working as a physiotherapist, an advanced practice physiotherapist who is a specialist in working with catastrophic injuries, that's complex, catastrophic, nasty injuries, with a particular interest in ongoing pain, in other words, chronic pain problems that people have that persist well after the injury has mended, phantom limb pain, complex regional pain syndrome, etc. And also the mental aspect of anxiety, and that's all of the different kinds of anxiety that there are, including PTSD, social anxiety, etc., and the depression. And the reason that I have that side is because I'm also qualified as a psychotherapist, and I'm registered as a psychotherapist and insured to work as a psychotherapist. And I also practice as a hypnotherapist. I'm a researcher, I'm an author, and I'm a speaker. So I come to this from the practical aspects of providing people with tips and tools. But what we're going to be going through today, this is not designed to be a medical treatment. When you work with me, if you want to work with me, it is an assessment. We go through an assessment at the beginning, and there are usually processes that people want to learn. And sometimes people think that coaching is just around using the resources you've got. But if I'm working with you, we use a very future-paced focus. We want to get you to where you want to go. However, coaching means that you have all the resources inside. And when I'm working with people, invariably, as a clinician, when we're working with people, it's more around education, training, enabling people to understand what's going on. But these tips are not designed to be medical treatment. So if you've actually got a psychiatrist or psychologist that you're working with, you can use these to enable you to try things out. None of them should cause problems, but as I say, these are not treating you. And I say that quite clearly. So this is not a medical treatment presentation. let's crack on. So what we're going to be covering in this, I always like to make sure you know what we'll cover is, what is self-doubt? Where does self-doubt come from? And then, as I say, the 4 tips to help you to reduce self-doubt. So one way of thinking about that might be around the idea of managing self-doubt. So that's about what you can do. And in order to actually really grasp the nettle, if you like, of what you can do, means taking on board that there is actually an ownership there, that something about something that's going on to do with your self-doubt. There's something about something that you can do something about. It's not you're totally taken over by this. Although having said that, as a youngster, I had problems with anxiety in my very early years. I was probably only about 7. I had a lot of fear. I now know that I was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck as I was being born, which caused me to feel a lot of fear. So fear was a natural trigger for me. However, as a very resilient child, I taught myself a lot of techniques and tips and ways to actually overcome that. And that's something I'm doing with you. But when we think about self-doubt, it's very important to recognize that self-doubt is something that some people get a huge amount of difficulty with, especially if you have social anxiety. And it's a very interesting one. I think self-doubt is a very interesting one. So looking forward to going through this with you. After I've finished with this will go into the units section. So it will be in the units section. It will stay up like this for today, and then I'll transfer it over into the units section where it will stay. So whenever we have a discussion, whenever you have a discussion about something, we have a debate, it's always good to actually identify what we're talking about when we talk about self-doubt, because it might mean something completely different to you than it does to me. So just let's be clear about what it is that we're talking about when we talk about self-doubt. So self-doubt is something that happens. It's something that happens. It's a happening, and it occurs when we lack confidence. So when you lack confidence, or you feel incapable of doing things that you need to do, then you start to feel a sense of self-doubt. And people who doubt about themselves experience uncertainty around things that they can't control, or worry about things that are not going to plan. So I think this is quite a nice, useful definition, because it implies that there is a relationship between self-doubt and confidence and capabilities. Because if you don't have the capability to do something, let's supposing somebody said to me, would you like to jump off the top of the house? I'd be like, no, I don't think I've got the capability to do that. So there is this huge relationship between self-doubt and capabilities, in other words, skills, and self-doubt and confidence. So already we're beginning to start to look at things that you can change, which is awesome. It's amazing. So going back into my history, the fact that I learned how to do some things to help me to control some of the feelings that I got, that as a child, I didn't know this was anxiety and fear. I just learned ways that I didn't get those nasty feelings, and they worked. So the second part is about people who doubt themselves. So when people doubt themselves, doubt the decisions they've made, or did I make the right decision? Could I have done that better? Sometimes, we can call it by different names, and I'll give you an example in a minute. But people who doubt themselves experience uncertainty around things they can't control. So there's another variable there, because it's like, how much can we control? It's like, how much can we control? Can we control the weather? No. Can we control whether it's going to rain tomorrow? No. Can we control somebody else's responses? Well, we can influence how they respond, but often we can't. There's so much actually we can't control that it's an interesting one, isn't it, about control. Or worry about things not going according to plan. Well, I've been there, and I'm sure you have been too, where you've got this, you've got this nicely mapped out plan of how you think you're going to go. And in the UK, right now, when I'm recording this in the UK, we're facing the virus that nobody thought was, who imagined this last year? Who imagined this time last year that this would be what this year would be like? How could we have planned for this? It's really so this is why I like this definition, because actually when you really read it, there's lots of things in there that actually mean that you can make shifts and changes to do with confidence, capabilities, self-judgment, doubting yourself, wondering if you can do something, control, how much can you control, whether things are planned or not planned. So actually, I think there's quite a lot you can unpack there around self-doubt, which means that I think that's quite, well, pardon me for saying so, but I think that's quite exciting. Because it's like, based on that sort of description, how many times do you think everybody feels totally confident the whole time? I would say 0. I remember reading the book, or was it the bit about Barack Obama, talking about the problems that he and Michelle Obama had in the marriage, and him talking and saying there were nights when he used to lie awake worrying about whether the marriage would last. That is doubt, that's worry, that's fear. Can't control it. That's a president who's done amazing stuff, I've heard people who you would never believe would have self-doubt. Olympic athletes. I've been party confidentially wise to hearing them talking about things. And, self-doubt is a huge one when it comes to winning competitions. If people don't believe they're going to win, then, that is the winner's mind. If you can get yourself to the point where you truly believe, but you have to have everything else there. So I actually really like this, and this is one reason why I like to do a slide presentation alongside what I do, because I think it's there for you to go back and read, and you can actually look at it and go, actually, that makes sense. So let's move on. So how common do you think it is for people to have self-doubt? Let's just throw that out there. And as I say, I can't see any comments. If there's anyone watching this live, I can't see it, because when I go in and I do this via Zoom, actually, invariably, I can't see myself up on screen. I can't see myself showing up. I just go in and I have to stop any self-doubt, worries, or anything similar that there might be that makes me believe this isn't happening. This is going live somewhere. It might not be where I think it's going, but let's just have confidence, hey, that this is going in. How common do you think it is for people to experience self-doubt? You see, I'd say this is very, very common. I'd say self-doubt is probably one of the biggest barriers that I encounter when people are going to make any sort of choice over anything. People having self-doubt that there is anything that they can do to assist them to make changes in their own health, thinking that they need some external force that's going to do that. Do you think this is something I can do? Do you really think this is something I can do myself? Is a comment that I often hear from people. Yeah. So, and do you judge it as a good or a bad thing to have self-doubt? I think this is a really useful thing to think about. Is it good or bad? You might say, well, I don't judge things, but what you might find is actually when you really break it down, you do. And I know I do. I know I judge things. I know I am as judgmental as every other person there is in the universe. I have very strong beliefs around certain things, and at other times I don't. But I also know that I have self-doubt. I have fears. Of course I do. Do I think it's a good or bad thing? What, for me to have self-doubt? Well, I'd say sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good. And how much self-doubt is enough? It's an interesting one, isn't it? How do we measure how much self-doubt? We can't pour it into a container. So how do we know if we've got too much self-doubt? And that old phrase comes up for me, a problem is only a problem if it's a problem for you. So if you can manage your self-doubt and it's not getting in the way of you doing what you'd really passionately love to do, it's not really a problem then. So what happens when you have self-doubt? Usually you get feelings inside you, and those feelings are feelings of fear. We say they're feeling scared and out of control, but it is fear. It is worry. There are all sorts of things that can go alongside it. Years ago, when I was a student and I was first left home, I was only about, 19, 18, something like that. And I was making all my decisions and choices myself without really any experience of doing any of this, cooking for myself, shopping for myself, looking after myself. I used to feel scared and out of control at times. Sometimes I'd worry about whether I'd done the right thing or the wrong time, and I'd be talking to myself inside my head, find myself running over things. And sometimes I used to get physical feelings of fear, and you might get that too, like palpitations or feeling of panic, even feeling fear to the extent that you just don't even want to go outside. You just don't even dare get out of bed some days. So feeling scared and out of control, there's a relation to self-doubt. And I'm smiling because actually I think when you know that those feelings of feeling scared and out of control can actually be causing you more feelings, this is very important, because when you feel really anxious and you start to overbreathe, you feel those feelings of feeling scared and out of control, it triggers off a whole set of what we call physiological responses that can also trigger a cascade of other symptoms and sensations, etc. If you don't understand how anxiety the thinking can trigger the feelings, it can trigger all sorts of other feelings, then you can find you start to get worried about the feelings that you're getting when you feel scared and out of control. So let's just accept that self-doubt can lead on to feeling scared and out of control. And that for some people you can be so anxious that we use a general anxiety disorder scale. You can be way up right at the very top. And sometimes even between one session and a second, when I speak to people, they can go from being way up at the top. And I know if I did the GAD score at that point, they'd be scoring 15. And then by the time I speak to them the next time, they've already slunk down and they're only on about 9. So feeling scared and out of control is horrible. And yet there are things you can do about it. So where does it come from? Where does all this come from? Where does this come from? Well, we know that some people are more susceptible on their genes, have little bits of gene, and put them in, you put me in a certain situation and circumstance, then I'm probably a good manifester of anxiety. I'm a good worrier. A worrier. I worry about things. I worry about people. So part of where mine comes from is maybe a bit of genetics, a bit of, as I say, trauma when I was born. Maybe there's something to do with my family history. Maybe, I don't know, all sorts of things. But, we can have all sorts of reasons. You can even have a tendency, like a trait, that it is, some people have that particular trait that they just are very good at worrying. But oftentimes, that but comes in. Oftentimes there are situations and circumstances, judgments, which can start happening from other people at quite a young age, where we can start to doubt ourselves. And if you're not in a situation or circumstance where you've got people who really, really validate who you are, that can actually cause an enormous amount of anxiety. So where does it come from? Lots of places, lots of places, lots of places, lots of things influence our self-doubt. Let's talk tips, because this is really what it's about. Because we can talk about the fact that you have self-doubt in situations, certain situations and circumstances, etc. But most times what you're going to find is that there is a series and sequence of events that take place. And it might be that you get yourself into a real bind because you're talking to yourself about what you might do and can't do and should do and shouldn't do. And you get to a point where you just don't make any decisions because you keep thinking you're going to get it wrong, or you keep worrying that other people are going to judge you, or you're so concerned about what other people might say about you behind your back, you just don't do anything at all. So let's talk some tips. These are very simple, straightforward tips that you can try out. Give some feedback. Let me know how you do. And remember that if you want to go into these in more depth, you can always ask me to spend 90 minutes on the phone with you. We can go through a bit of it one-to-one. And instead of just having the theory, you can have it for you. So there we go. So the first tip is this: think of a positive angle to the trait. And that might sound, but imagine that you were, or there was somebody who had such lack of self-doubt, total lack of self-doubt, that they truly believed that every single thing they said and did was 100% as it should be. Now, we know that there are times where, and I've dealt with them, some athletes have such powerful confidence and ability, belief in themselves, that actually the way they're doing things can be causing them to be injured or keep breaking down an old injury and they keep hurting themselves. Now, for that athlete, that lack of self-doubt is equally damaging. Supposing I'm driving down the road and there's somebody walking on the pavement, and they have absolute no self-doubt at all. They completely believe that if they walk across the road, they will not get knocked down by a car. And they just walk across the road. They get knocked down. They just walk straight in front of my car. So, what happened? Well, I just didn't believe that I could be knocked over. I've walked over this junction 100 times in the course of the last year, and nobody has ever knocked me down. Now, I actually was looking after somebody some time back who had a brain injury. And he had a powerful belief that it was safe to walk across the road. It was safer. He considered it to be safer. His accident had happened at a zebra crossing with lights. Oops, noise, not something. His accident had happened at a zebra crossing where there were lights. And what had happened was that as he waited for the lights to change, the lights had changed, he'd walked across and somebody knocked him over. It had caused a head injury, and sometimes when you have a brain injury, it causes you not to think in a logical way. But he had made the decision that it was therefore not safe to cross the road at zebra crossings. So I said, so are you crossing the road? Oh, yes, he said. I said, well, where are you crossing? Well, just anywhere. And I said, well, is that... Now, in his head, he had decided that it was safer to cross anywhere. So he was now jaywalking across this busy road, and he lived near an A road that was busy in London with traffic like this, right? But he had created this belief that it was safer for him to do this, and he didn't doubt his belief. And that is a little bit of an extreme case, but there are times where people really, really don't have. They don't doubt that what they've chosen to do. People make investments and they don't doubt it. And they go bankrupt. They lose all their money. They won't listen to anyone. So think of a positive trait, a positive angle to this trait. Having some self-doubt is important. Not having too much, but having some self-doubt is really useful and important. So if you're going to be working in, let's say, the healthcare industry, having some self-doubt is a very, very useful thing to have, because supposing I have somebody who comes to me and they're talking to me about presenting symptoms, let's say. I suppose in the back of my mind, I'm running through mentally thinking to myself, I have to always be careful in case this person might be coming and they might have secondary cancer. They might be having TB. They might have a neurological condition. They might have all manner of underlying problems that are presenting with this kind of symptom. Now, supposing I didn't have any self-doubt, supposing what happens is that I believe that the pain that you've got or the person's coming to me can be treated easily with this form of treatment. And I don't do all my checks and I miss a few things. And then it turns out the person has something that's really badly wrong with them and needs some intervention. And actually, I didn't bother to do my checks. Well, I don't think that would be very good. In fact, I'd probably get struck off. So having self-doubt, it can also be harnessed in a positive way. Thinking twice. So thinking twice, acting once. So there's always a positive angle to a trait. So you could think of a lot of situations and circumstances where having a little bit of self-doubt, questioning something, could be quite a useful thing to be. If it gets too much, it can be destructive, but instead of thinking of it as a negative trait, just something, there could be a positive angle to this. All right, there could be a positive angle to this trait because most times, most things are serving us well because they are there for safety, for security. So most times we do things because it makes us feel safe. We don't want to take a risk because we might get it wrong. Might spend some money and not be able to afford to pay for everything. Might make a decision to go a certain way in your business. Then you get it wrong. Okay? So think of it as positive angle to the trait as opposed to always negative. Oh no, I was a terrible situation. It's like, okay, think of positive angle, but also remember that your unconscious mind will be tending to protect you. So if you get too much into this, it can be that you literally get stuck. Don't know which way to go. So one of the things that taking a positive angle to the trait shows, it shows that you've got a degree of self-love. And we know that loving yourself, really loving yourself, is incredibly powerful when it comes to any form of healthcare. Putting yourself first and really loving yourself, accepting yourself, really accepting who you are. If you've got this tendency, you probably need to actually take a little bit more care over a lot of things. So showing self-love for yourself is really important. And you might say, well, I don't love myself because I do this. Well, that would be an interesting thing to work on. Actually really just liking yourself for doing these things. And again, if it's something you don't feel you can do, you can go deeper. Perfectionism. So being a perfectionist, wanting to get things right, is probably one of the reasons that I was late today to come in and do this presentation, because I wanted to make it a good one for you, all right? But that's not a bad trait. It's not a bad trait to be a bit of a perfectionist. I didn't get it perfect, I never do. Doesn't matter, I've got it good enough. But being a perfectionist, doing something over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, at a certain point you have to stop because it's never going to be perfect. Stuff's never going to be perfect. You can always do another one. I can always scrap this and make another one. Yes? And the third one is what's called the paradox of choice. Now, one of the things with choice is that the more options you have, the less easy it is to make a choice, but also the less you value the choice that you make. So this is something that's come up. There was a book written all about the paradox of choice. And if I go to some supermarkets where they've got like 800 different forms of breakfast cereal, I just wander down the aisle and it's like, oh, there's too much choice. And I would just walk out. It's like, oh, there's too much choice. I just don't know what I want. Just buy some porridge oats, make some muesli. But having too much choice is actually, it's not good. So if you're someone who experiences self-doubt, reduce down the choices that you have to make. And I don't mean like don't make loads of choices, but when you have to make a decision, if you've got to the point where you can't decide if you want to have tea or coffee in the mornings, make one of each. Make one of each. Yeah, make a coffee, make a tea. If you like it, a coffee with, you're not sure if you want milk or you don't want milk, do both. Taste the one with no milk. Okay, taste the one with milk. I like the one with milk today. If you get halfway through and you think, actually, I don't think I'm enjoying this, go back to drinking the other one. Why? Because you've made a choice. At that point, you've made a choice. If you can't decide what to have for breakfast, well, make a list. Cross the things out you don't feel like it, and then just plump for one. You get halfway through and you think, actually, I don't like cereal today. It's like, well, stop it. Put some cling film on the top, put it in the fridge, have something else. It's not something that you can't change. But the paradox of choice means that the more choices and options you have open to you, the more challenging it is to make the choices. And the less you really value the choice that you have made. Interesting. So that's tip one. So I said this before, but recognizing that people experience self-doubt is actually really useful, because when you're walking around day to day, you may look at people and think that they're actually incredibly confident. But every single person experiences self-doubt in various aspects of their life. Just because they're highly confident in the workplace doesn't mean that they don't have self-doubt at home. Just because they really are confident at home doesn't mean that they've got confidence when they go into the workplace. Just because they've got confidence in the workplace doesn't mean that they've got confidence to stand up and do a presentation. Everyone experiences self-doubt. Everyone. Every single person experiences self-doubt. So everybody does. They will all call it by different things, and some people will deny that they do, but they do. Everybody does experience self-doubt, and believe you me, I've worked with enough top-level athletes to know that when you really begin to start to talk about them to certain things, they will have huge self-doubt in certain areas. And I would say, I mean, all the clients, everybody experiences self-doubt, and it varies over time. So recognizing that people experience self-doubt is really useful. So this tip is a really practical tip, because this, I've put it down, so don't just read it, go, oh, what does it say? What does it say? So supposing you're in a situation, this is what this is geared up to be around. You're in a situation with a group of people, and they're all talking about, you know, what might we do? In fact, I'm just going to think, can I go? Yeah, going to go back one. So let's put this in a frame. So imagine you're at work, you're working where it's family, and the whole family are trying to decide, let's say it's Christmas, good old Christmas coming. And they're all trying to decide, well, what are we going to do on Christmas Day, right? Because right now you can't get together. Well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And everybody is saying, well, if we everyone come up with ideas. When it comes to you, you know that you're somebody who experiences self-doubt. You know that you're probably going to think, oh, I've said the wrong thing and nobody else is going to like what I say. So I've come up with a phrase, a way that you could put this together so that you don't just get dismissed. Because if you're somebody who experiences self-doubt, the tendency might be, oh, don't ask me. I find it really difficult to make these decisions. Just don't ask me. What you really need to do, if you're wanting to begin to start to develop your self-doubt muscles, if you like, is actually to have people allow you to have your say, and for you to have your say, but also to know you're taking a risk. So I've put this phrases together. Try it out. Let me know how it works. Here we go. So supposing they're saying, oh, what's your idea about what we should all do on Christmas Day? The first one is to tell people, oh, I always worry I get things wrong. Okay, now you're owning up to that. You're not asking for sympathy. Oh, I just always worry I get these sort of things wrong. But you should expect your opinion to be heard, yes? So before they jump in and say, oh, that's all right, don't worry, it's like, get in with the next bit. Nevertheless, right now, my thoughts are X, Y, Z. So you might say, oh, I always worry I'll get things wrong. Nevertheless, right now, I was thinking it might be quite fun if we had a sort of some sort of competition that we could do, like bingo or something. We'd all get together and play bingo over Zoom, right? Then you want to give yourself space to change your mind, all right? So what you want to do is then to say the next bit. However, let me hear what you think and we can decide. So you say to them, so if they say, well, what do you think, Joe, Mary, John? What do you think we should do over Christmas? Well, I always worry I'll get that wrong. Nevertheless, you say, get in with a nevertheless. Right now, my thoughts are we could play bingo over Zoom. However, just let me hear what you guys have to think. You know, we can all decide, right? That's quite a powerful thing to say because you're actually being quite brave. Because you're saying, you know, I'm always worried I'm going to get this thing wrong. Nevertheless, right now, my thoughts are bing, bing, bing. Just say something, anything. However, let me hear what you think and we can decide. We can decide. We can decide. Like you can decide for me. Oh, you do it. You decide. I can't be bothered. Oh, I never know how to do these things. No, just make a little decision. If you've been thinking about it, you might have thought of 3 things. And if they all turn around and go, nah, it's not a good idea. It's like that is where we then come into the next tip that I'm going to give you, okay? I've already thought of that one. So this is on the slide. You can write it down, have a practice, use it. Somebody says, what dress do you think I should wear to that do? Oh, I was where I got it wrong. Nevertheless, right now, my thoughts are, wear the green outfit with the scarf and the shoes and the however, you know, just let me hear what you think and we can decide, right? How does that land with you? You could try it on for size. You could write it down. If you know you're going to be asked, what do you think you should get mum for Christmas? Oh, I was worried I'm going to get this thing wrong. Nevertheless, right now the thoughts are that we just buy her a voucher for the supermarket. However, you know, just let me hear what you think and we can decide. Easy, done, dusted. If they turn around, this is where the next bit comes in and they go, oh, I didn't think it's a good idea. This is where the next one comes in. So, recognize that it's going to be confidence that's going to enable you to be able to vocalize this. So choose the little things first, right? It's the small things, you know, oh, do you think we should have gammon on Christmas Day? Or, oh, do you think the roast potatoes should be bought from this supermarket or this one, right? So recognize that confidence can be learned. And the more that you build up your confidence tools with little bits and pieces that you feel safe doing, the more you're going to overcome some of your self-doubt, because it's like, yes, I won, I did that one, well done me. So recognize that confidence can be learned, but also recognize, and I'm not sure, people are not born confident. All right, so you get a personality trait, which is you get some youngsters that love using their body and they want to take risks. That doesn't mean they're confident, because they fall over lots and they hurt themselves and they cry and they do things. People are not born confident. You have to learn skills to be confident. And failing at trying out a skill, absolutely okay. So if you try something out and it doesn't work, that's fine. So people are not born confident. Most times, most people who are really confident at doing something have done it lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of times. I first started doing presentations when I was a child, literally. I used to do presentations in front of my friends. I used to be on the stage performing, doing dancing, because I didn't think anybody was watching me. I just used to be up there dancing and having fun. And then as a student, I used to have to do things in front of people and it didn't worry me. When I got a bit older, it started to bother me. And then I learned a technique. However, I've done presentations on big stages. I get nerves, of course, but I know I can do it. Why? Because I've got the skills. I've learned the skills. And failing at something is okay. If I do something and it doesn't work so well, that's okay. So recognize that there is always learning, right? You're learning all the time. You take the risk of trying out that sentence that I gave you earlier. Write it down. You've done it. Oh, well done. Do you think you're going to be brilliant the first time? No. No. Do you think people might be surprised? Yes. Do you think you might get some praise? Yes. Well done. Oh, wow. Gosh, that's well done you. So this is why I say recognize there is always learning to be had from whatever you're doing. You can guarantee, this is the other one, some folks won't like you. You can guarantee it, 100%. As I do these presentations, as I put this out, you can guarantee some of you are like, oh, I can't stand being in her group, I can't stand her. That's fine. Go away, go and find another group. But there would be some people who like me and what I'm doing and get some value out of this. Cool, hang around. Bring more people like you. But you can guarantee that some folks won't like you. And as soon as you grasp that nettle, literally you've heard that phrase, grasping the nettle, going to get stung, you know you will. As soon as you grasp that nettle and you accept that some folks won't like you and you move on, because if you're around people who don't like you, go and find people who do. If they really don't value you, find a few people who do. They'll do your self-confidence the power of good. And like yourself. Okay, so here we go. All right, we'll go back again. So based on this, when you're talking to people, and remember I said about this process before, when you're going to vocalize, nevertheless, when you actually are talking to people, there are going to be people who say things to you where you feel as if you're being judged and self-doubt is going to creep in. So this is a really simple step-by-step formula that I learned to do years ago, and I don't always practice it, but I do when I'm in a situation and circumstance. You can use it on social media. When you put something up on social media and somebody makes a comment, you can use this process. If you're in a situation and someone makes a comment and you're not sure about it, you can use this process. Very simple. But the foundation of it is that there is learning. There's always learning, right? I say always, 99.99% of the time, there is learning to be had from it. So let's go through the process. So recognize there's always learning. So when you're talking to somebody else, half the time you don't really know where they're coming from. You don't know what's going on in their head. They're choosing words, they're coming up with things. And if they make a comment about something, you've got to interpret that comment and make a reality. So the first thing to do is if somebody says something to you that you would normally take as a criticism or a judgment, just listen to what they have to say. Literally listen. And don't rush back with an answer. You know, spend 2 or 5 seconds thinking about it. And ask yourself, is there anything I can learn from this? Now remember, most times there is something you can learn, even if I don't like this person. Or actually this comment that's been made, yeah, that's useful feedback. There's a bit to learn from that. You know, and often there is something that you can learn from it. If somebody says something that is like, you tell them what you'd like at Christmas and their response is, oh, we don't usually hear much from you. Just listen to it, think about it and think, oh, that's interesting. Is there anything to be learned from it? Oh, well, yeah, they told me they don't often hear from me. Okay, then there's a simple response. Recognize that there's always learning and answer yes. So in other words, yes, I'm going to learn something from that. If somebody turns around and says, we don't hear much from you, instead of going, go, yes, there's something for me to learn that, and say, okay, thank you for that. That's it. Don't get into a great big discussion with them about why they don't hear from you and because, no. Oh, okay, thank you for that. Simple as that. Thank you. So on social media, if somebody puts a comment up and you think, oh, that's interesting. This person doesn't have at all the same views to me. thank you, a little love. You don't need to get into a discussion, although having said that, you're talking to somebody who sometimes does get into discussion. It never ends up good if I do that. But just putting thank you. Thank you for that. A little thank you for that. Because you see, if you do something like that, it means that you're not taking on what that person is, whatever. You don't know, you just heard what they've said. Is there anything for me to learn from that? Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. And as I say, most times there is something to learn. Most times, even if you learn that you don't like the person or they, whatever. However, if you really think there isn't anything for me to learn from this, there's nothing for me to learn from this. This person is just being plain nasty. They're just being plain nasty. And there are people who are just nasty. Yeah. That's a judgment, but really there are. So even though you recognize there's a learning to be had from it, you're not going to go, oh yes, thank you for that. Your reply could be, oh, well, where's that coming from? Not a, oh, where's that coming from? But a, oh, interesting. Okay, where's that coming from? Now, if somebody says, well, where's that coming from? What you're wanting to do is you're asking them for a bit more information. Again, that takes confidence. Oh, where's that coming from? You're not justifying, you're not saying anything about whether you agree, disagree. Where's that coming from? And if what happens, the person then goes, well, what are you talking about? Like, you listen and you do the same thing again. So this is why I say you recognize it's always learning and you rinse and repeat. Because if somebody has to actually think about what they just said, sometimes they change what they say. So if they say to you, oh, we don't hear much from you. Okay, thank you for that. But we don't. Yeah, is there anything? Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thanks. So, so what's made you speak out today? Oh, they're interested. Well, I'm just speaking out, right? Because now they've gone into a different level. Oh, okay. That's it. You just rinse and repeat. If actually they turn around and go, whoa, what's happened with you then? What's happened with you? They noticed it changed. Oh, thank you for that. Ooh, oh, where's that coming from? Yes. So all you're doing is putting it back to the person. Play with it. See how you do. Because remember that language is power. Language is huge power. I've spent, a long time studying language. I had a lot of time studying language when I worked with the athletes. And then I went off and I did a massive, about 10 years, a decade of working with breaking down the structure of language and using language skills with a lot of people to enable them to understand how they can change their reality through using the words. So I hope this has been helpful. As I say, I've streamed this in live today. I'll leave this up in the group. I look forward to some comments from you. When it's finished, I will put this tomorrow. I'll put into the units section and that's where it will stay. So have a lovely day. I've been in for quite a while today. Love you all. Take care, and let's see if I can just stop all of this now. Brilliant. Love you all. Take care.